All right, welcome back. Now, every now and then, when a case of national importance is being litigated, Kenyans are treated to some brilliant young minds from the legal fraternity. Tonight, we speak to two lawyers, Caroline Jerono of Caroline Jerono and Company Advocates, and Christian Andole of Professor Albert Muma and Company Advocates, who both held their own in the Court of Appeal last week. Thank you both for joining me in studio. I'll start with the obvious question. How has life changed since last week for the both of you? I mean, when you're thinking about a platform like that and what it offers you in terms of a young legal mind trying to cut your teeth, and you have that public acclaim, what changed? I'll start with you, Caroline.
Vicky, thank you for having me on your show. I wouldn't say much has changed. Okay. But definitely the fame that has come, being known. Otherwise, it's been a moment of winding off from the pressure that we had the entire month of June, and also prior to that, to the judgment of the Superior Court. So basically, I wouldn't say much has changed for me, but a platform that has been created, and I'm looking forward to better things from the events that happened a week ago.
Right. Christian, have you been quoted, because you also quoted famous African author Chinua Achebe several times in your submission, but what has changed for you?
I mean, I'd say that what has really changed, there has actually been some change, and what I'd say that what has changed for me is the fact that, you know, being given such a podium of national importance, for me, what changes is looking at humility itself. So now the thing that I have to do, you know, you have to put pride aside. This was a humbling experience for me. And it was so humbling for me because of the fact that so many people from all walks of life, people even outside Kenya that I don't know, would actually write to me emails, you know, coming into my LinkedIn account and telling me, Christian, you have inspired me. I didn't know much, but you have inspired me. Someone from Eldoret, some guy called Kosgei, wrote me an email and said, I'm an engineer, I have read your story, and your story actually mirrors mine somehow. But I have decided that I'm going to pursue law. Someone from Rwanda says, Christian, I watched you, and I liked the energy and your submissions. Professors of law, professors worldwide, that we even quoted at the Court of Appeal, actually acknowledging that the work that you are doing is not just simple work. This was work for the rest of this country. And for me, you know, standing on that podium and making submission with no incentive whatsoever on it, it was actually a climax of what it is that we can do for Kenyans and to speak for that common mwananchi who's there. So I literally actually just appreciate every other person who actually took me to this, the whole team of Morara and Omoke, who took me to this platform and enabled me to speak out and be a mouthpiece to the Kenyans of this country.
Yeah, you know, as much as it brought such accolades and recognition, you're so right. This is a service to the public. And for you, Caroline, what got you into it? You know, what was the motivation that you said, this is it? I want to be a lawyer and I want to litigate for Kenyans.
Starting from my childhood, basically the environment that I was in, that I grew up in, it was a very challenging environment where I would see a lot of injustices. Personally, and the people around me, I would say, that propelled me into pursuing law, not just to benefit myself and my family, but also for so many other people who have been victims of injustices. And it's along the way, I found mentorship. I found inspiration from people who are already in the profession. I would mention reserving the name of one judge who came to my school and I was informed too, and actually changed my line of thought in terms of what career I would want to take. And he has held my hand since then. He's been my mentor. So along there, I got to understand actually what it takes to study law. And getting into the practice, my desire has been to be in the private practice. So when I joined Elias Mutuma, whom I work with at the moment, he introduced me into public interest litigation. It was a whole new area for me. But he has actually oriented me so well, and he gave me this brief, the BBI bill, to start it, to research on, and to come up with the first draft. We worked together, prepared all the pleadings for the High Court, and when the judgment came in our favor, we rejoiced. And then the Court of Appeal, the appellants went to the Court of Appeal, and this was another podium that I seized with all the energy. So I would say that I've been motivated, one, from where I come from, the environment that I grew up in. And along the way, I have also gotten inspired that I'm one of the few girls from Nandi County who have studied law. So I know that I am a mirror of the society at the moment. And I appreciate that, as Christian has mentioned, that the things that we have done in the recent past have actually inspired so many people. So many people from my village have been calling. So many people from the school that I schooled in, that is Kapoli Girls, have really felt that a young girl from a village school is able to conquer the world. So it is, I'm so inspired personally, and I am glad that this opportunity came and that we seized the moment.
Absolutely. Seize the moment is the correct phrase in this case for both of you. Christian, I was looking into your story on a different platform, and you mentioned there was a moment during the digital migration case, and you saw senior counsel Fred Ngatia making his argument, and that sparked something in you. Tell us about that moment and how you kind of began that path into law.
All right. A couple of people have actually been instrumental in my career, but in terms of just stumbling into law, I stumbled into law because of senior counsel Fred Ngatia. I think there was a case of Royal Media Services versus Communications Authority of Kenya some times back when we were trying to move from analog to digital. I can't remember exactly which party senior counsel was actually representing, but when he made submissions, and I looked at it and I said, if he can make submissions this way, then I think I could actually also do the same thing. This is such marvelous arguments that are being made right here. So throughout my career, I mean, personally, let me say, before I got to the Court of Appeal, I have never made submissions before any judge at all in this country. Wow. Never. Not even a magistrate.
So when were you admitted to the bar?
I was admitted to the bar on 3rd of March 2021.
This year?
This year.
Wow, incredible.
So when this opportunity came, I mean, there are other people that I've actually looked up to, but you know, literally I have loved being a litigator in court. So when I had, and there are various people that I actually looked at. Senior counsel Fred Ngatia is one of them. There is Professor Githu Muigai, senior counsel, as well. When Professor Githu Muigai would, you know, be submitting and perhaps take a constitution and say, the jurists of this country, I'd be looking at it and say, you know, this is actually something really good to look at. So I'd marvel at such. So through looking and observing, and looking at, when I was doing my pupillage, looking at Professor Albert Muma do his submissions, looking at Charles Aguara do his submissions, literally now I was getting absorbed into this work. It's work that I love. This is what I want to do. And literally I want to see myself in court for quite a long, long while. Yes.
You know, Caroline, you alluded a bit to what the preps are for a case like this. You started from the High Court point of all of this. Yeah. But what does it really take for someone who wants to get to those levels, the upper echelons of legal argument? What does it take?
Victoria, when you get to understand what you want to pursue in the legal realms, and it definitely needs a lot of hard work and research, because there's so much that goes into preparing for a case.
Yeah.
People would look at the oral submissions part, the end game, and the judgment, but there's so much that goes into it. So there's a lot of research, there's a lot of comparative study, especially for such a case that would be so new for us, young advocates. It also needs the confidence and the resilience, because to be able to convince the judges that why they should grant you your prayers, you must package your pleadings in a proper manner. Yeah. You must put in a lot of research and prepare your pleadings in such a manner that is going to be very convincing and that you will not regret to the tail end, because it's a journey, starting from drafting that plaint or that petition, to filing, to attending court when there are mentions or directions or hearing, to preparing submissions, to getting the authorities that you have to rely on. And you know how I think when you followed the BBI appeals, there were so many references that were made. So it cannot just happen overnight. So there is a lot that goes into it. A lot of research, basically, a lot of perusing those law books until you package your pleadings to an extent that you know you are very satisfied as a person. And there's also beauty about peer review. However seasoned you are, you'll definitely be confident if you referred your work to someone else to look at them before even you file, so that you have the approval of your peer. And something that is lacking in a number of advocates is that you just trust your work and you submit as it is. So when it becomes a bad case or you don't win it, you start blaming yourself or blaming someone else. So I believe that, and because we are focusing on young advocates, I would say that there is more to, like what Andole did. You don't have to wait for work to look for you. You have to go out there and seize the opportunity. And something that so many young advocates would want to have things fixed. Right. If we talk about seasoned advocates, it has taken a long time for them to build their brand. So we have to also be very patient and put a lot of hard work into it.
And speaking about the senior advocates, I want to shift gears a bit here. Earlier this week, we commemorated Sabasaba Day, and we know what that means in the history of this country. You two were standing beside senior counsel who, in their younger days, their fight at that time was multipartism. When you look at the sign of the times now and the struggle of today, what is a key issue that you feel will become your fight at this point in time? I'll start with you, Christian.
Thank you very much for that question. The history of this country, starting from 7th of July 1990 with Sabasaba, is a history that I've actually read about, with this country being assailed on all fronts with the clamor for multipartism. And actually at this particular moment, now we have multipartism entrenched in our constitution. So on 3rd of December 1991, there was this journalist on Washington Post who, when he was interviewing Professor Makau Mutua, Professor Makau Mutua said that with the clamor of multipartism right now, what he is actually looking at is social change, political change, moral rightness, and generational change. Yeah. So the question now comes to generational change. I think now what is actually happening at this particular moment is generational change. So now what is actually the issues that we could be looking at this particular moment? We have liberties that we have been fighting from, and we can never run away from our history, in this country especially. So now when we have all these liberties, all of them now entrenched in our constitution, the same constitution that we said we give it to ourselves and to our children, to posterity, then it actually behooves us as young people to look at what are the elements of constitutionalism, what are the elements of the rule of law, and what is access to justice within this constitution. Those are the critical issues that I'm looking at this particular moment. And my strongest point is that if we only look at the Constitution as it is and try to implement it as it is, then eventually what I'm looking at is all these issues of national unity, all these issues of youth employment, with the rule of law and proper constitutionalism, we will actually sail through. Why am I actually saying that? Because the reason why we are at this position that we are is because the forest remained the monkeys remained the same, even when the forest was trying to change. So literally, we are having a government of people, which government of people has got the same people who were actually struggling throughout in independence. And now when we're having a new constitution, they still want to have the same similar things that were in this, lots of in the previous constitution working out in the previous constitution. There's a reason why we promulgated this constitution. Those are the issues that we should be looking at.
You mentioned constitutionalism, and you know it's a really important issue in this country. I remember doing an interview where I talked to constitutional lawyer Bobby Mkangi, and he said, yeah, we have a beautiful constitution, amazing, world class. But he said, Wananchi will judge their life from the way they feel in their pocket, not how beautiful a constitution is. And so that kind of speaks to this whole idea of why haven't we yet implemented the socioeconomic rights that are embedded in the Constitution. Things like right to education, health, clean water, decent housing. Practical things that many, many, many Kenyans in this country do not know. Caroline, how do we make that a reality? You know, and speaking to what Christian was just talking about, how does the Constitution work for the people that it was supposed to or it was drafted for?
Victoria, the unfortunate thing about our country is that Mwananchi does not know that that she has that sovereign right that we talk about. They have revered the political leaders to an extent that they feel that the political leaders are above the law. So because of that fear, they will only be looking out for a politician or a representative who is going to feed them, who is going to give them the handout that we talk about. If we have that paradigm shift, that Mwananchi believes and has the confidence that power belongs to her, the Wanjiku that we talk about, the moment we understand that we have to empower institutions and not individuals, that is when we will have a different country, where Mwananchi will feel why this constitution was promulgated in the first place. So, my concern would be, have we done enough civic education? Do that poor woman somewhere in Kakuma, or that Mama Mboga in Kibera, do they know that there's a document called a constitution? Or that they just wait for the politicians to come and chant to them? So we need to go an extra mile as professionals, and specifically referring to our profession as advocates, because the Law Society of Kenya Act has given us that mandate as the legal profession to sensitize Kenyans of their rights so that they are able to claim. We have an issue with the recalling an MP, a senator. Why? Because the Constitution has given power to the legislature to enact a law that is going to hang them in a hangman's noose. So it's so hard for that to happen in the current crop of parliamentarians that we have, because they are so self-centered. If we have leadership that adheres to the Constitution, that gives service to the people, servant leadership, the moment we have that, Kenyans will feel that there's a document called a constitution and it is there to serve their rights. But we will not shy away from bringing out the achievements that have happened so far. We have seen people being taken to court for non-compliance with Chapter 6 of the Constitution. We have seen laws that are enacted in violation of Article 10, public participation, being nullified by the court. So, and I can refer to the recent case of a citizen who, because he was dissatisfied by the president, moved to court to challenge him in his personal capacity, Isaac Aluo Chair. That is one example to show that Kenyans are getting sensitized. And I appreciate the power of social media, that so many Kenyans are getting to know their rights and demanding service. So we just need to do an extra thing, getting to the ground, to the grassroots, to sensitize those people, so that when we go to elections next year, people are informed that they don't have to vote in someone because he's given them 50 shillings or 100 shillings, but that they are able to hold them to account because it is, they have given them, they have donated their power to represent them, so that we stop this common tradition that a member of parliament or a president is being feared or taken in as if he is a semigod. No.
No, and you're so right. They are simply custodians of the power that the people have handed over to them. And I just can't wait for the day when Kenyans realize Chapter 1 of the Constitution says sovereignty of the people. It's no coincidence that it's called that or titled that. But let me shift really quickly because we're running out of time. And something that you said, Christian, about access to justice. We know during the COVID-19 period, it has been frustrated in terms of the process. And not to say that there have been challenges already when it comes to access to justice in this country. But you add on a pandemic, and you have the courts now having to struggle between balancing safety and administration of justice. You've got online. Do you find that has helped to remedy the situation? But also when you're thinking about how many big cases, murder trials, were put on hold last year, what implications are we going to see because of that interruption of COVID-19?
Thank you, Vicky, for that question. To begin with, access to justice is a fundamental right of all Kenyans in Kenya, embedded in the Constitution. If I'm not wrong, it's Article 48. And access to justice would definitely mean quantitative or qualitative. Those two factions cannot be read outside each other. They are together. But even before I actually decide to talk about access to justice, I want to remember what Chief Justice C.B. Madan and Chief Justice Anyanga Nyanya and Chief Justice Evans Gisheru on 10th of February 1986, in the case of Stanley Munga, if I'm not wrong, versus the Republic. These three justices said this about Stanley. They said, Stanley Munga, exclamation mark. You have beseeched this court for an order of prohibition. We give it to you. Take it. When you go out, look onto the hills and say a prayer to your gods, for your rights are actually protected under the juridical system of Kenya. That was in 1986. Stanley Munga had actually been assailed by the state in so many ways on his rights. I want to go to it. Now, this is actually Justice C.B. Madan saying that access to justice is protected, and we as the judiciary are going to ensure that that has happened. I'm so happy that just before Chief Justice Maraga went, he decided to digitize the platform, and now we have the e-filing system. But now when you look at the Kenyan landscape, we have about 40 to 43% of internet penetration. And when you look at these, there are other stations in this country. I have been at stations like Kajiado, law courts. They're trying, but internet would be a problem. I am not so sure whether courts in places like where I talked about Baragoi, not Kapsabet, but Baragoi and West Pokot, I'm not so sure how they are able to access justice. But I'm actually also really happy that recently President Kenyatta decided to launch air balloons, which now there's 4G network through that, and areas like Baringo are able to access that. So now during this COVID pandemic, though I know that for sure there are Kenyans who might not be having a digital platform to actually log on to courts, there is actually need for sensitization of people that matters are always handled in courts. But looking also on the flip side, the disadvantage of this is that we have hearings that are supposed to be happening, murder trials. There has been cases of trials of murders that are actually of public importance. But because of the COVID-19 that has actually assailed this country, courts are not able to sit.
Right.
Now, how would actually courts be doing this? I am so happy that there are some judges who would actually decide to have tents outside court to just make sure that we are adhering to the COVID protocols, but still not, and making sure that every other Kenyan is able to access justice. So on my end, there is actually more to be done, but looking at these statistics, we are supposed to inform ourselves on what more we can actually do as litigants, as advocates, as members of the bench, and members of the bar.
Final word goes to you, Caroline. Just in terms of where you see the legal fraternity going. And I guess what I'm asking is the criticality of lawyers post-2022. It's going to be a very interesting year. But where do you see their place and their role come next year and moving forward?
Vicky, just to recap before I pick up on your question, if you look at the current parliament, the composition comprises of a number of advocates who've joined in, as well as county governments. You will find a number of lawyers there. Why? Because this constitution has created a platform for advocates, for lawyers. And so many institutions that were set up courtesy of the Constitution of Kenya 2010 has lawyers in it, in so many quarters. So looking at this country post-2022 and the position or what the role that the advocates can play is seizing the opportunity for leadership, but also standing in to criticize the government where needed. We look at our profession and the Law Society of Kenya. In the past, it has put the government in check. I want to believe that we put our house in order and stand in for Mwananchi to defend the Constitution and to protect it as it deserves for the interest of all the Kenyans. I want to believe that we are able to propel this country forward by taking up or playing our role as advocates. So basically, let's wait and see how 2022 will roll out with the constitution in place and having all those constitutional offices being respected and given the respect that it deserves, then we are safe.
Fantastic. We have to leave it there. Thank you so much, Caroline and Christian, for your time. Wonderful insights, a lot of food for thought that I know a lot of our viewers will be digesting throughout this evening and the weekend as well. Thank you for watching That Does It for Citizen Weekend. I'm Victoria Rubadiri. Stay tuned though. One Love is coming up next.